And doing the daily 10-4 will get you into those 4 habits quickly. Those 4 habits consist of adding 10 people to your database, connecting with 10 people through telephone or even in person, writing 10 notes or letters, and previewing 10 homes. Notice the previewing of 10 homes is really each week, not 10 homes per day. How do you ensure that you're keeping up with the daily 10-4 activities? The answer is by time blocking for them and tracking your progress. Time blocking is a method of organizing your day and focusing on those dollar productive activities that matter most, which you know are your daily 10-4. Time blocking is the habit that allows you to schedule appointments with yourself to effectively manage your day. Time blocking keeps you focused, free of distractions, enjoying what you're committed to. And even Gary Keller admits it's tough. It's easy to say, I'm going to time block and lead generate. Wow, that's simple. That's all I'm going to do. Unfortunately, it's easy to get distracted with helping others, dealing with problems, working with clients, or anything else that can come up in a day. Remember that if you're a race, you must place. There will be times when the true emergency arises during one of your time blocks. You'll obviously need to respond to that emergency, and the key is to replace the time. If you use an hour to deal with the emergency, immediately replace that hour by blocking another hour on your calendar to return to your task. Most people need help because it's not easy to remain focused on one thing on a regular basis. The structured approach to lead generation is not necessarily fun, and it appears to take you away from the freedom and the fun of running your own business. To help you in forming the habit of time blocking for and completing your daily 10-4, Ignite gives you tools. In your student manual for Ignite Power Session 1, an Ignite Success Tracker is included to help you plan out when you will do each daily 10-4 activities. This weekly success tracker guides you to write down exactly what days of the week and what hours you will do your lead generation. In today's session, you'll learn how to transfer the Ignite Success Tracker into your Google Calendar. You'll notice that all of the 10-4 activities have been added as repeating events. So they're showing up every day on the times that we have blocked for our 10-4. We want to go ahead and add a new event. The new event we're going to create is prepare the call list, because we need to start prospecting and adding contacts to our database. We can't prospect if we don't have our call list prepared. So under 8:30, we will prepare our call list. So we're going to title this Prepare. We are going to repeat this, and we're going to repeat it every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're going to start it tomorrow, and we're not going to put an end to it just yet. We're going to click Done and Save. And notice now that the Prepare for Calls goes through. Now, you'll also notice that we prepped it for 8:30 to 9:30, which is overlapping our 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and make an edit to this particular series of events. We'll go ahead and click on any one of the items, click on Edit Event. We're going to change it from 8:30 to 9 o'clock instead of 9:30. We're going to click Save. And it's going to ask, do we want to save only this event, the following events, or all events in the series? And for this example, we want to allow all events to be changed. You'll notice now that they're changed from 8:30 to 9. We'd also like you to notice that each of the events has its own unique colors. We can add colors to our event when we're creating the event, or we can change the colors if we choose of our events. When you're done choosing the colors or making any additional edits, be sure to save. You can always find all kinds of training and support resources on mykw.kw.com. Hover over the technology link, then choose KW Google Apps Resources. And if you're ever looking for an answer on any of the Google products, you can always Google it. Thanks for being here for another New Agent Mondays. Hope you're making it a great day, Kevin.
All right, so anybody have any questions, comments after watching the video? And you see there's lots of tools out there, so then you essentially need to manage your time on your schedule. You can use something, I mean, Google's free, but it's whatever really you're comfortable with using. Just make sure you use something to help you manage your time. See, what the really premise they're trying to hit on too is you have to look at, like, you have a tree and you have fruit on the tree, right? And human instinct is to naturally pick the lower hanging fruit. So if that's what's happening during your day and you're not time blocking, you're never going to get to this stuff up here, which is the harder to reach stuff. So by setting up that time blocking and hopefully getting the toughest thing you have to do for the day out of the way by the morning, then by noon, you're pretty much set for the rest of the day. I know I have to use time blocking, even me, I'm not lead generating, but I have time blocks, especially end of the month, certain times of the month, beginning of the month I have bills to pay, end of the month I have transmittal, so I have to make sure I time block for that too. So the main thing is, just setting a schedule, but also making sure it's realistic too. I'll give you guys for an example. With Leanne, now that she started the role as a team leader, she has to do the same things. So she has time blocking, and she sets up so she can do her lead generation. When I say being realistic about it, on the other side of the coin, for example, every day on Tuesday she goes down to the board meeting. She gets there at 9. I don't know, typically goes an hour tops, and she goes to the tour afterwards. So we know on that day there's no way she's going to be able to time block lead generation from 9 to 11 or 9 to noon. So if she's going to make any phone calls lead generation wise, then she knows she needs to move that block in the afternoon. It's kind of the same thing on Wednesday too, because on Wednesday we have a staff meeting at 9. She has a coaching appointment with April at 9:30, and then we have the team meeting at 11. So on that day, same thing. There's no way you're really going to be able to make productive calls between 9 and noon. So one important piece is obviously setting the time blocks and honoring them, but from the other side, the practical side too, making sure it's something that's doable for you. For example, if you guys have something you have to do in the morning that there's no way you can lead generate on that day, then ideally you want to move it later on in the day, kind of like how he said, if you race, you must replace. So because you're not going to be able to do it in the morning, then you set that time block in the afternoon. And more importantly, take ownership of your schedule, because if you don't, other people will. Something I learned years ago, I was at family reunion. We're in a little breakout session. They were talking about, ways to make sure you can time block and stay on task and all that. And, there was experienced MCAs, experienced TLs, OPs that have been doing this for years. And one of the offices, even what they came in with, because they were like, hey, we're going super heavy on making sure everybody's doing lead generation from 9 to 12. Now, they went probably a lot more heavy-handed than we ever would, but that's what that office decided to do. So from 9 to 12, everybody's supposed to be lead generation. So they came up with a sign system. It was just like a stoplight. It was red, light, and green. If it's green, you can come in my door, just knock on the door, walk on in. If it's yellow, make sure you grab my attention first. If it's red, do not come in my office unless the building's on fire. I mean, they were that adamant about following it. Then also what they learned too was the MCA, for example, she put a sign-up sheet outside her door and said, hey, while I'm doing the activities I have to do every day, just go ahead and sign up on the sign-up sheet, and as soon as I'm done, I'll come grab you. She said, she was in a big office. I think she was in Houston with like 600 agents. She said she'd have 10 or 15 agents sign up. Then by the time she'd go around talking to them, only 2 of those people needed something at that point too. So a lot of times, just because we're seekers by nature, we go out to try to seek things, but we also have to be respectful of each other's schedules. And when we're trying to lead generate, there's nothing worse than when you're getting it's tough enough to make calls as it is. So when you're pumping yourself up, you're getting ready to make the calls, you start doing. Nothing's more frustrating when someone comes up and it's like, shoot, now you just kind of, it's almost like you're performing, you know what I mean? They kind of throw a wrench in your performance. So it's just making sure that everybody respects everybody's time and understands that that's, how time blocking can work for you. When you look back at your your week, obviously you're going to have some things you got done that were big wins, some things that you didn't. So that's another reason why you would go back, look at your calendar, be realistic, and see where can I set this time blocking week. And, really piggybacking off too, I think what scares a lot of people in the beginning too is because you always hear the magical 3 number, which is you want to try to get the 3 hours a day lead generating. You guys were all at the training. I don't know if you were out. When Tony Brody sat here, don't even focus on that so much because that was scary to me. If anything, if you have to start off with 15 minutes, start off with 15 minutes a day for a week, 2 weeks. Then once you're comfortable with that, step up to half an hour, then an hour, then an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever schedule you want to do. But at least if you're doing some sort of lead generation and you're building on it, you're going to see the results, over time. So I would just suggest, after class, whatever you use, if you're going to use Google Calendar or anything like that, that's what I would use. If you're not too familiar with it, you can Google it or you can come ask me, Jessica. We're both pretty familiar on how to use it. It's pretty easy to use. And then the beauty of Google, obviously, is then you can access it from anywhere. And you can even share it with your family and friends. Like if you want your family to say, hey, don't be bugging me between 9 and 12 because I'm going to be focused on this, you can share your calendar with them too so they can see what's going on during the day. When we talk about maximizing your productivity, becoming truly productive is a matter of generating productivity habits that you routinely do every day, and it begins as a deliberate decision. You shape the routines that create your habits, the habits that will lead you to your goals. You make the choice. Just say no. Begin by generating a not-to-do list for all the tasks that would serve you, only conserve your time, then don't do them. Determine what can be handled more effectively with technology and what you can delegate. In our people-pleasing industry, it's often difficult to say no to people. However, without a plan for saying no, you may very well end up feeling overworked, overstressed, and out of time. 4 steps to clarify your no. The first step would be clarify by asking questions. Make sure you understand the request. The second step would be, if you need to say no, do so. You can be polite and firm simultaneously. Number 3, remember that no is a complete sentence. You do not have to justify your reasons for saying no. Number 4, suggest viable alternative resources for the person requesting your time. And more importantly, anything you can delegate, do it when you can. Each time you begin a new task, ask yourself, could someone else be doing this? If your answer is yes, pass it off to that person. Now I'll add in, I know in the beginning, especially when you're getting your business up and running, that's kind of hard to do because some people, don't have the wherewithal to outsource to other people. So I would also say, make sure you do the stuff you're going to delegate to someone else, not during your lead generation time, in the afternoon or in the evening. And then your goal would be build yourself up to where eventually. Now some of you kind of always delegate as it is. I mean, the first huge delegation for an agent, honestly, is getting a TC. Because, working on a file isn't lead generating. Yeah, you have to have a complete file for broker compliance to get you paid, but it's not generating you any money while you're doing it. Here we have a pretty high ratio of agents that use. There's only like 3 or 4, honestly, at this point that don't use a TC. But most people, it's a transaction coordinator. They basically facilitate all the paperwork, getting transferred back and forth, making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and all that sort of stuff.
Can we have somebody at some point, not right now, but at some point explain what a TC does?
If you want to grab me afterwards, I have a flyer too.
Okay. Because there's a lot of confusion, and even when you're working with the TC, I've seen people do stuff that I'm under the impression it's the TC that could be doing it, and therefore, why are you wasting your time?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Well, it helps clear too because we always tease, because we want people to use TCs because it makes your life easier. It helps you lead generate more and all that. But you always hear Jan joke around. I just hand it off to my TC. But being that as it is, you still have to remember you're the one that's still contractually on all that paperwork. So there's certain things that still apply to you. Yes, they make your job easier, more fluid, but at the end of the day, your name's still on the contract. So there's some things, like you said, it's just clarifying who does what, and where do they help, and where do you still have things you have to do.
Yeah.
But ideally, in the process, the way they would make it easier, they could help you, get your listing packet. So when you go out, because the goal would be, like, for example, when you take a listing, just go ahead and get all your disclosures at least dropped off, if not signed at that time, so you don't have to go back, meet the client again and go over all that stuff. And then, they'll help you with your timelines, stuff like that. Make sure hey, your 17 days is coming up. How we doing? Stuff like that. Time blocking for lead generation. So time blocking is a method of organizing your day and focusing on the dollar-productive activities that matter most. It is a habit that allows you to schedule appointments with yourself to effectively manage your day. Some tips to keep in mind as long as you develop this habit are, don't instrumentally fill up your calendar with events. Remember that you are in business, not busyness. So what they're saying is, make sure what you put on there, again, is stuff that's going to help you generate more leads. It's not just busy work. 'Cause, yeah, there's plenty of busy work to be done, but you want to focus on that when you're not focusing on your lead generation. This kind of goes into what I said earlier. Be realistic. Don't try to time block every minute of your day or your week. That's not ideal either. Ideally, you're just trying to protect, the beginning half of your workday. Block for the most important tasks, the dollar productive activities of lead generation. And lastly, like they were saying, make sure if you erase that you do replace. There will be times when a true emergency arises during one of your time blocks. You will obviously need to respond. The key is to replace that time. So for example, like they said on the video, if you use an hour to deal with the emergency, immediately replace that hour by blocking another hour on your calendar to return to your task. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the same day. I mean, if you need to add an hour to the next day or another day down the road, that's how you would do it. So we're going to do a quick little 2-minute exercise. So I want you guys to write down exactly what days of the week and what hours you will be able to do your lead generation. And then in your calendar, day planner, time block for lead generation every day for up to 1 month. So essentially just figure out, what would be the best time for you to do that. And also make sure you time block for previewing homes. I think I'm always about being strategic. So for example, I know Leanne's role pretty well, so that's how I can apply it to you guys. Because she's essentially doing the same thing you guys are. You guys are selling homes. She's trying to get agents in here, but it's still, basically the same process. So for example, when she goes to when we talked earlier, she can't time block out 3 hours in the morning on Tuesday because she goes, that's still lead generation because she's going to the board, she's meeting people face to face, she's having conversations with them, and she's strategically going around to all the open houses, introducing herself, talking to those people, so that's essentially her lead generation for the day. This can be the same thing for you guys. So the reason I'm saying that is obviously one strategic way to time block for previewing homes would be to go to the MLS meeting and go to the tour afterwards. I mean, I don't know, what do they have, anywhere from 5 to 10?
Yeah.
So at least you get half of them out of the way.
Yeah.
And it helps you kind of know, what the inventory is. Now, honestly, this hasn't been as much of an issue. This was kind of a lost art for a while, especially in the REO market, because things would sell so fast. Back then it was more of a math equation to be able to buy the house than it was, a service. People just had to make sure that the price in the home made sense. Now that we've come back to a more traditional market where you're actually working with sellers versus working with a bank, that's where this preview can be very handy. I know even years ago, the board used to have a little magazine they would put out every month that would have homes in it. We get a 2-page ad in it. It was only $500. We'd split with the agents. Each agent would have their little picture up there. We'd have their number. And there was basically 18 little blocks we could do on the bottom. They put their listings in, which was, at the end of the day, they're only paying. You pay $5 to have your picture up at the top, your picture and your number, and then if you want to add at the bottom, it was like $17. So you're talking $22 for advertising in a magazine that goes out all month versus in the paper where you're one Saturday for $800. So it was a pretty good buy. But what kind of killed that too was the REO market, because at that time agents weren't willing to put their houses, even though it was only $16, $17. Remember, by the time that article came out, the house had already sold, so there was no real point in marketing. I mean, back then, if you guys would have seen the home section in the newspaper was the same way. That's when they started to lose a lot of their advertising dollars because people were like, hey, it makes no sense for me to advertise this home in the paper because by the time the paper comes out, it's probably going to be sold. I mean, it was literally that quick. I mean, even my house, I bought my house before it was even on the market, because it was one of our agents here, and they said, hey, I got a listing coming up on this house. You want to go check it out? Went and checked it out, wrote the offer before it even came on the market. So same thing. If you would have advertised it, it wouldn't have done you any good. Get focused. It is a lot simpler than most people think. And Power Session 5, accountability, we went over checking in on your goals and your big why. You learned about focus, that the little difference that makes the big difference in our lives. In The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Gary Keller presents 5 simple steps that will lead you to great focus and open up a world of possibilities in your business and your life. The first 2 steps are as follows. So step 1, You create a personal plan and make the implementation process part of your focus. Follow a big plan and is built from a big model and make the implementation process from your focus. Aim high and don't allow your goals to be a ceiling of your achievement. If you aim too low, you might sit back and stop trying once you hit your goal. It's better to aim high and allow yourself to pause and celebrate your success along the way. Focus bringing results. Stay focused on the process of implementing the daily 10-4. So what he's also saying, the bigger you think, the bigger it's kind of like the goldfish effect. The bigger the fish tank is, the bigger the goldfish gets. It's the same thing with your mind. I don't know if you guys have seen, I'd love to show you guys it, but I think it might be the KW history video. There is some old videos it kind of has the history timeline of Keller Williams. And you literally see Gary Keller back in the 1980s. He just got a screened yellow or gray t-shirt and it says Lead Generation Boot Camp on it. When he first opened up the office, he already changed to where it was Keller Williams International. Before there was no Keller Williams International. It was just one little mom and pop office with him and Joe Williams. That was it. So even then he was thinking that big. So the bigger you're able to think, the bigger you're able to rise. Number 2, time block to get your focus. So make sure the daily 10-4 activities get done. If everyone has the same amount of time, then success at a high level isn't about how much time you have, but rather how much you use that time. Time blocking is a skill that absolutely must be learned, practiced, and turned into a key productivity business habit. I can speak to that personally. I'm pretty on point, pretty task-oriented person, but even me, time blocking has helped and changed. It just helps you focus and recognize on the things you should be working on that time. Because like they said, there are a million distractions that can come in. And I'll even give you guys some simple ones I've changed over the years. Before, you guys know about the way we normally do office bills. A lot of times you'd have an agent that would use a credit card every month. And they come by and say, hey, I can't pay by credit card this month. I'll get you a check by the end of the month. Say, okay, that's good to go. So I used to always do a verbal on that. Well, I have a pretty good memory most of the time. But one day, somebody told one of our agents that told me that. Something happened, had to go put out a fire. Totally spaced it. 3 days later, went ahead and charged her credit card because I'd forgotten it. And I was like, she calls me, she's like, hey, I told you not to charge that card. Crap, now I'm losing around. Totally apologize. So then in my mind, I'm like, well, you need to do something to fix it. So in the future, I always said, hey, if you pay every month by your credit card, and then, for example, you come and tell me one month, I'll tell you, can you do me a quick favor and just send me an email? That way I have it too. That way, it isn't like there's anything wrong with me, wrong with you. It's just sometimes the world happens. So if I have that to fall back on, because every other time before that was perfectly fine. But once something bad happens, whatever fire happens that pulls you away from what you're concentrating on, I totally lost that chain of thought. So then I wasn't able to write a note down and say, hey, don't charge this person's card. So that's why I created my own little thing. Said, okay, so in the future, just make sure they go ahead and send you an email. That way you don't have to think about it. In the upcoming power sessions on accountability, you'll learn the 3 remaining steps to getting focus, which is get accountability to keep your focus, make sure your environment supports your focus, and keep your energy to maintain your focus. So number 3 is, get accountability, which I think you guys are kind of already doing that through going to the classes here. Just make sure you have a peer partner, somebody you work with, and then also working with April and the other coach. I apologize, I forget what her name is. Diane. Make sure your environment supports your focus. So I think you guys can all appreciate that, especially when you work in a bullpen type area where there's multiple people, multiple things going around. So I see you stepping here a lot, which is great. So anytime you feel like you need to do something, you can come in here. You can use one of the side, offices. If that's what you need to do, that's perfectly fine. That's what they're telling you right there. Is if you need to go get an acquired environment, make sure you do that because it will help you, keep your focus. I've never been diagnosed with ADD, but if there's like something loud going on in the background, I have a pretty hard focus, so maybe I do, and it just never got diagnosed, and didn't have a lot of medication for that stuff when I was a kid, so I just learned to self-cope with it. But I can get easily distracted at times, so it's really, really important to make sure your environment supports you in what you're trying to do. Then the last one is make sure you keep your energy up to maintain your focus. I know it's tough. I know it's hard to be sunny and happy all the time, but you also have to remember, when you make a call, our internal perception is that the clients don't see that, they don't hear it, but they hear and see a lot more than you realize. So if you need to take a couple minutes back before you make calls, center yourself and all that, make sure you're doing it. I can speak from personal experience of working with people that have made calls, that have lead generated for this and for other things before, if you're not on point on that, you're just, at that point, you're just kind of blowing through calls. So, I mean, if you had 3 or 4 possible good outcomes that would come out of that, but you're not in the right mindset, those may have been the 3 leads you would have got this week. So it's just making sure you're on point as much as possible. And also, make sure you reward yourself. I've heard Gary Keller say it many times before, if you set the bar here and you hit here, here's still really good. So that's the reason why we set the bar that high. So make sure you reward yourself, during the week. It could be something small, it could be something big, it could be a trip to Reno, it could be a trip to a day spa, whatever you guys want. Just remember, set some goals, so what you want to do for the week, and then when you complete them, it makes you strive more towards that. Let's see this part. And just also remember what your options are to keep you on the path to success besides your productivity coach. KW's MAPS coaching provides several programs. They're actually talking about the Bold experience, so we know we have that coming up. So if you've gone before, I think it's always good to go again, at least the free part, because you never know, they're always changing stuff and adapting stuff as it comes down the pipe. Plus, different people connect with different, people. For example, I don't know how many of you guys are football people, but if you kind of know general football the last 4 years, in the 70s, the big team was the Steelers. They won 4 Super Bowls. Then in the 80s, early 90s, it was the Niners, and they won 5 Super Bowls. But I've seen countless stories on this written of if you took the 2 quarterbacks and totally flipped them around, both of them will tell you there's no way I could ever be successful with the other coach. Because, for example, the coach that was the coach in the 70s was Chuck Knox. He was a real, excuse my French, hard ass. But that's what Terry Bradshaw, who was the quarterback of the Steelers at that time, needed. He needed someone who was like that. Whereas Joe Montana and Steve Young with the Niners, they had Bill Walsh, who was a little more easygoing, that sort of stuff. So a lot of times it's, you can't put a square peg in a round hole. So, I mean, sometimes they're just naturally people we don't get along with, we don't gravitate towards. So by going to that class, you may have not gotten the best or the experience with the last teacher, but maybe you connect with this one before. I mean, that's why there's, if there was, part of it I know is you have to have so much time a day, but that's why there's so many coaches out there too, is because not everybody mixes with, I even seen with us, we've had different type of TL coaches before. We've had some that are like, boom, 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 I want to see your numbers, that's all I talk about, and you have some that get more into the mental aspect, and we're going to prep you, we're going to be strategic about this, so we all know there's more than one way to skin a cat. So make sure you just try to be open-minded and then see what comes out of it.
Just both free.
It is, yeah. The first step, it's on the 13th of August at 8:30 in Chico. So if you want to carpool, talk to Jessica. She's taking a list for carpool, and you can just carpool with people here. Just signing up for it. But yeah, the first event's free.
First one's free, then there's like 7 weeks.
I think so, yeah.
Those cost.
Oh, okay.
So every week, I don't think you guys necessarily have to stick to this. I think you just do what you're comfortable with, but they're suggesting every week you have a different accountability and script partner because familiarity breeds acceptance. Yeah, they don't want you to get too comfortable, but I also say, be with someone you're comfortable that way, because sometimes doing role-playing script isn't the fun or most comfortable thing to do, so make sure but then eventually you would want to transfer to someone else just to make sure you're getting a different aspect, to bounce ideas off. It's kind of like, Leanne always comes to me and she's like, oh man, you know this, you know that, you know everything. I was like, well, you gotta remember, I wasn't born like this. I've been here, I'll be 10 years in February, so after 10 years, yeah, there's been some struggles and I've learned things, but it's only because I've been here 10 years. It's not like I knew this stuff, when I walked through the door. So just, make sure you guys select accountability and script partner. Have a set time you guys are going to go over. And more importantly, have fun with it. I mean, I've always heard even, Gary Keller, I've heard he's a very rigid coach. And that, for example, if you're lucky enough to be coached by Gary Keller, he calls you, he wants to go over your numbers, you say you don't have your numbers, he hangs up. That's just how he is. But on the other side, his coach would also say he cares about you a lot, and then part of that coaching conversation is a lot to do, with family stuff. For example, I can even give you guys examples we've seen with the ALC before. Now, not here locally, but we've learned at ALC clinics and stuff like that. Typically, when you have an ALC meeting, we're going over, kind of how we did for the last month, what we're seeing, what's coming down the pipe, any training we need to bring, any issues we need to cover, that sort of stuff. So, it's kind of like a meeting that we have, set in stone every month like that. Well, And one of the offices that was helping us train, when we first would go to ALC clinics and stuff like that, they were talking about, this is the standard structure you want to follow and all that. But one of the other things, and we recently just changed now this year, is one of the primary focuses of the ALC now is going over each ALC member's business, where they're at, how they're doing, what can we do to help them. So even in, I believe it was even in Austin Southwest, which was the first market center, one time, they're having an ALC meeting, they have Joe sitting over in the corner, and Joe's just being a little more quiet than he normally is. They're going over everybody's numbers, and Joe just didn't want to share his numbers. So like, okay, what's going on here? So the team leader kind of goes over and grabs his, hey, what's going on, Joe? And he hit a rough, he was always a big producer, and he hit a rough patch for like a couple months. So she paused, looked at all the ALC members, said, can we table whatever we discuss, meet with, till next month? And then right now, what we're actually going to go over is we're going to figure out plans to help Joe grow his business. So instead of focusing just solely on the office and how they're going to grow the office and all that, they said, let's change, channels for a second and help Joe get back up to where he needs to be, which is the more important part of the focus. So anytime you're doing any sort of accountability with anybody, you have to remember, you have to be prepared to answer questions about the following: what your goals are, what your big why is, what your results are, your wins for the week, your opportunities for the next week, then also what you will do differently. And also remember that accountability goes both ways. So if you have a partner that they're holding you accountable, but you're not able to hold them, you probably need to find a new partner too. Accountability's got to work both ways. That's the whole point of it. Like I have an accountability partner right now. This is an MCA. She's an MCA out of San Jose, so we meet once a week. We go over our 401s, what our wins for the week, what our opportunities were, and what we're going to do the next week. Which is, it's always good to have somebody that's kind of in the same position to bounce things off, just like you guys. If you find an agent that you're comfortable with that's feeling the same pains you are, then you're able to help each other through them. Remember, when you're holding someone else accountable, you got to keep the conversation confidential, of course. Be encouraging and supportive. When excuses or complaints come up, ask, how can you get it done? How can you help? Number 3, confirm date and time of the next accountability check-in. And then they have a little sheet you can go over, and it's the same things again as, what's your goal? What's your big why? What results did you achieve this week? What wins did you experience? What opportunities for change or improvement surfaced? What will you do differently next week? And then what will you reward yourself with your accomplish? I mean, this all goes hand in hand with the 6 personal perspectives, but you also have to remember, when you hear being a victim versus being accountable, some of the stuff is naturally ingrained into us, so it's hard to get out. But you see, as you keep work on it, you learn to look at things differently, because it is really easy sometimes when it's not your job and someone says, well, you didn't do that. It's easy to say, hey, it's not my job, I didn't screw that up, because that's the natural human reaction. But that's not when you guys come to me for something, that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear me talk, nor your clients either. So it's, learning skills to help you with that, because there are going to be situations, unfortunately, where something comes up and it really isn't your fault, but you still want to handle it right to make the client feel taken care of and know that you're still going to take care of it through the process. I mean, there's obviously many other people involved in the process. There's title, escrow, insurance, lender, appraiser, home inspector. So there's many opportunities for, feelings and things to get rubbed the wrong way. I mean, even just had one. Colleen's had a deal going on now for like 2.5, 3 years that it's just now finally getting ready to close. And it's one where they basically, attorneys have had to get involved in everything else because the husband doesn't want to sell, the wife does. The husband's been removed off everything. The only thing he's on at this point is just title, and that's it. That's the only thing he's on. He has no rights. He has nothing on this property. The escrow officer finally got sick of him. So as it was right about ready to close, he called, was threatening him, and he's not even, by law, he's not even supposed to call anybody, anything on it. The judge has put a gag order on him and everything else. He called and finally teed off the escrow officer. So the escrow officer said, you're going to have to move this escrow after 2.5 years. I cannot deal with this guy anymore. So, I mean, it's the same thing. Everybody has a threshold. Everybody has, a limit of what they can deal with. So just make sure, anytime you're in these situations, you handle them right, but also cognizant of the fact that we all have, a line that once it gets up to it, it's tough to keep taking it at that point. So your action plan for the week coming up is going to be to time block and complete the following activities before the next power session. So you want to finalize all, I know earlier it kind of talked about going out for the month, but at least, try to do next week before you start next week. And if that goes well, maybe do the next 2 weeks. And if that goes well after 2 weeks, then maybe move it towards a month. But like I said earlier, obviously you want to plan out your schedule as much as possible for the month too, because like we said, you have to be realistic and you're not going to be able to lead like if you have a family vacation plan for a week in August, you're obviously not going to be able to lead generate during that week. I'm going to give you guys another example. For yesterday, we're on our coaching call with our coach, and Leanne and Peter had 22 appointments last month. So the goal is eventually to get to 40 every month. That's the standard they want you to hit. So our coach is like, good, you guys did a good job. You did more than this month last year. Last year we had 9, and this month you had 22, so that's a good, huge increase, 1. So 2, the other thing we want to build on, same thing with you guys, you want to take it in steps, is that we want to +1 it. So he's like, I'm not talking +1 going from 22 to 23. Have 1 more a week. So instead of having 22 appointments, next month we want you to have 26. Okay, 26 sounds like a doable goal. No problem, but then we have to take a step back for a second. So next month there's 21 work days. Leanne's going to be gone for 5 days to Mega Camp, for the week of Mega Camp. She's going to be gone 2 days with me. We're going down to the Recruit Select training in Thomas. And then she's going to be gone 1 day for the First Step to Bowl. So instead of 21 working days, she only really has 13 that she can focus and concentrate on getting appointments. So you take the 26 divided by 13 is 2, which that's kind of funny because that's the magical number they always want us, to hit, and you guys to hit 2. Ideally, you want to get 2 solid leads a day that you're working on that you can set appointments for with either a buyer or a seller. For her, it's the same thing. The goal is to get 2 appointments set each day so she can have 2 appointments each day, as they come up over time. So the reason why I bring all that up is you have to be realistic about it, because a lot of times I've seen where people fail is they hear time blocking, say, okay, I'm going to put it in my schedule, that's it. Like you said, it's really easy to put it in your schedule. Google makes it really easy on us. But the hard part's following it. So if you realistically can't block out 9 to 12 every day for lead generation because you have family events coming up, you have commitments you have to do, that's fine. Like I said, you erase and you replace. So instead of having it in the morning, you move it to the afternoon, or maybe if you're only going to lead generate, say if you're going to start off and do half an hour each day, then okay, I can't do it on Tuesday because I'm going to be at the board meeting in the morning, then on Wednesday you do it for an hour. So it's just being realistic and being practical about it, because you have both sides. It's always great when we could set goals and set standards, but if you can't go to it, then you're already kind of set up to fail because you're going to feel like I'm not hitting it. So you have to set something that's realistic, and it's realistic for you. Coming up next week for the Ignite Power sessions, they're going to have session number 11, which is going to be negotiate win-win agreements, which will go over learning the best practice for negotiating with an emphasis on striving for agreements that are win for both sides of the transaction. I would say that's honestly a really, really important one. You have to look at it the same way you would. So if you have a listing and someone brings you an offer, you look at the offer and you're like, man, I don't even want to take it to the seller. This is bad. You don't ever want that situation turned around on you too, where you send someone an offer and they do the same thing. And we had an agent who joined us a couple years ago that was a mega agent. He flat out told us, for a while, anytime I got an offer from Keller Williams, I would just throw it in the trash, which is illegal, by the way. I'm shocked he admitted it, but he said, I'm being honest. That's what I would do. So, you don't ever want to get in those type of situations. You want to make sure, if you ever have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. Rick Dawson. Contract stuff, I honestly can't help too much. You can ask, and I can see if I can help, but most of the time I'm probably going to have to kick it up to Rick or Dawson or somebody that's got more contracts. Right now, more of the bare basics I've learned in 10 years. Did you have a question?
Is there going to be a calendar for the month of August?
Yeah, there is. So before you leave, stop off Jessica yet. She just finished them yesterday, so that should be good to go. And it goes on the listing side too. Now, again, when we talk about time blocking, we're talking about what they want you to do and what's realistic. Same thing when you go out and get a listing. You'll hear someone who's coaching you say, if you're going to go out and get a listing, make sure it's priced right. That's the goal you want to get to. Now, we all know sometimes there's sellers that aren't going to listen. So the dirty little secret no one likes to say, and it is somewhat true as long as you work it right, it's still better to have your sign in that yard and have that thing being overpriced than not having your sign in the yard at all. Because you still may get buyers from it. Maybe they're not going to buy that house, but maybe they buy another house. Ideally, yeah, you want to go in a situation and negotiate it right. But that's another reason why you want to go to a class like this, because it's going to teach you that if you have a seller, you don't want to push them too hard and they're not going to budge. There's steps you can still take to make it easier so that, if the house You're like, I've done comps everything. I know it's only worth 290. That's all it's worth. That's the most we're going to get. And that seller says, I need 330. I can't do any less than 330. So you list it at 330, but then you also put steps that, hey, in 2 weeks, if we do open houses, it's been on the MLS, it's going to go out on every syndicated thing KWS goes to. After 2 weeks, if we don't get any offers whatsoever, that obviously tells us the price is too high. So then you lower it, and you figure out what steps you want. Then you lower it by $5,000 or $10,000. Then after 2 weeks, again, same thing. If we don't see any movement, so it's setting those expectations front, because then also the seller's getting what they want, and the seller thinks they're right because they know better, right? But the proof is in the pudding. So if they don't see any activity those 2 weeks, it's going to make, then you don't have to go back and have that conversation with them later on that, hey, you know what, we haven't had any activity on this, we're going to need to lower the price. And they think it's you not doing your job, and that's not what the case is. We all know if the house is priced right, it's going to sell without a question. Most of the problem is honestly in the pricing, because sellers can be unrealistic at times. You know, they get fed information from the newspapers, from national media and all that, which doesn't always pertain to what's going on locally. So, you know, if they hear, hey, rent just jumped up 15% in the Bay Area, like, hey, well, I should be able to at least jump up my rent 10% here. That may not be the case. You know, that's where they have to trust you and rely on you as the local real estate professional. The next session after that is going to help you find seller leads. So it'll be helping you build your business by leveraging listings, which generate the maximum number of leads. And, you know, I'll go on that. Again, yesterday when our coaching call was the first time I actually heard somebody admit it. I'm like, thank God. So you guys heard me say a couple minutes ago, so the goal for appointments for a team leader is 40 appointments every month. That's their first basic goal they have to have. So in that, now when they say appointments, they actually mean they want 40 first-time appointments. So we're going to do some easy math here. So our local board has about 450 agents on it. Just doing rough math, I would say roughly 50 of those agents are ours. So really there's only 400 agents that work in this area that belong to that board that aren't a part of this office. So if you do 40 first-time appointments in 10 months, you've met everybody in the board now, right? So then at that point, what are you going to do after that? Because you don't have 40 new people. So we were talking that with our coach yesterday. And this is something you guys can use too for recruiting and for business. So we're talking and we said, yeah, you know, you guys do have what we really look at is it's an inventory deficiency, because we still want you to hit the 40 standard, but also, you know, which we weren't in the past, you can call anytime we meet with someone that's going to decide that they want to get their career in real estate and they sign up and pay the fee, then we're going to count that as an appointment because it's a legitimate appointment. In the past, some coaches say, hey, you're only supposed to count appointments with license, but that person's hopefully going to get their license at some point too, so it counts. So what our coach also brought up, he's like, hey, you know, I was thinking the same thing. He's like, and I worked in Tacoma, Washington, so it wasn't like there was a shortage of agents, but he's like, you know, every day when I would drive into work, I would drive by this little strip mall. And it had a lighting place, a jacuzzi place, and then like a Home Depot right next to it. He's only, I'm driving by every day. And all of a sudden one day I stop, I'm like, you know, I should just stop by just to see, you know, because if you think of it outside the box, homeowners buy lights, they buy new lighting, they upgrade their lighting at some point. Homeowners buy a spa at some point, and homeowners go to Home Depot and buy stuff to, you know, fix up their house at some point. So he stops off at the lighting place and said, this is no BS, I'm not making this up. He's like, I walk in there, just said, hey, my name's Mike Bastion, I'm the team leader down here in Tacoma, Washington. Just wanted to introduce myself and, you know, just wanted to ask you a quick little question if you wouldn't mind. Have you ever, you know, thought about selling real estate? The guy's like, you know, it's funny you asked. I just got my license 2 weeks ago and I hadn't decided where to hang. That guy is now a capper in the system who is under Mike in his profit share. So he's saying, you know, just like we teach you guys, if there's not enough inventory out there, we have to go get more listings. We have to get creative. So he's like, hey, every time you're in line at the grocery store, and he gave Leanne a simple script to use, you ask him. And he's like, you would be surprised because me and her both had the same answer when he asked that. He's like, when you ask that question, he's like, what percentage of, what do you think people's most common answer is? He said, most people say, you know, they'll at least say, yeah, you know, I thought about it. You know, never really get anywhere with it, but I thought about being a realtor. So if they at least thought about it, that's a start. And you go on from that way. So again, it's just, you know, thinking outside the box, recognizing that If we follow the system and the model exactly the way they want to, it's not going to get us to still the end result we need, which is, her to get 40 appointments a month. So now, we've looked at it. She really needs to get 30 appointments a month because the goal is with her and Joe, through the internship program, their goal is to get 10 people signed up every month that pay, that get their books and get in the program. So if 10 people do that every month, that's already 10 appointments right there. So now she only has to get 30. So that makes it a lot more manageable. So it's being smart, being strategic, and looking at everything you have that you can do. Then session 13, which I'll be teaching next Friday, is going to be checking in on how we're doing on time management, then also bringing the 411 in. I don't know if April's taught you guys or has you guys using a 411. We'll go over that next Friday. It's pretty simple to use. The big thing, in the beginning I always heard people say, well, it's a to-do list. But it's not a to-do list, it's a have-to-do list. So 411 is 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. So at the top you set what your yearly goals are, and they have different sheets you can use. I mean, you do your professional goals, your personal goals, family goals. You can even break it out all like that, what your goals are for the year. So then once you know what your goals are for the year, for example, we'll keep it for easy math. Say you decide, hey, next year, going into 2016, I want to sell 12 houses. That's my goal. So, okay, so for my year goal, I want to sell 12 houses. For my monthly goal, that means I have to sell a house a month. So then you go into your weekly goals. Well, I know for me, because I convert 50% of my buyer leads, and that's all I'm really working with right now, then I know I need to get at least 2 leads a week. And then you figure out what your fallout rate is. So you kind of have to reverse engineer it to figure out how much. So it helps you kind of whittle down to the daily activities you need to do to reach your yearly goal. And then, of course, it is a moving target, so things change. So, for example, it's great. Say you start focusing on lead generation, then by mid-July, you've got your 12 deals, and you can regroup and say, okay, so now my goal is to do another 12 by the end of the year. Then you set your schedule up on that. So it's just basically a way to kind of whittle it down to what you're supposed to do on a weekly basis to help you get to your monthly goal, which will help you get to your yearly goal. And that's all they have in the material. Do you guys have any ahas, any wins you guys want to share for the week that you guys had? Nothing. It was a hot week. That was it. Nobody got heat stroke. That's a win, right? Also be mindful, I'm only bringing this up because the heat too, I've been here long enough to track this sort of stuff. You'll kind of see ebbs and flows too. Like my feeling is in 60 days, you're going to see a week where there's nothing going to go on now. A couple years ago, I even saw we had where it rained for like a week straight, really, really bad, really hard rain. 60 days later, we had a week where there was nothing going on. So also remembering, what you do now, you're not really going to see the results for 30, 60, 90 days. They even tell us in coaching. That's why, last week we went to our regional leadership meeting. Yeah, it was in July. So we're talking about how great the first half of the year. We talked about how good June was. We're talking about how everything's looking for July. Things are still looking good for August. But really right now we're focused on October. So we're 90 days out. So you have to work on it. So if we want to make sure, as you guys know, we have that standard bell curve every year where business starts to drop off in September and October. What can we do now to help you guys get more deals, and what can you do now to make sure we're not spending money we don't have in those months also? Because, it's the red light, green light thing. We don't spend money we don't have. Well, unfortunately, we're not the federal government. We can't just print more money out and make simple things go away like that. That would be nice sometimes, but we don't have that opportunity. So that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions or ahas or anything you guys want to share. You guys are quiet. You guys ready for the weekend? Anybody doing any open houses? Yeah, which one?
I'm doing Paddington again because I've been there for the past 3 weeks, and I'm
You're moving
not
in?
going to do any door knocking this week in the heat. And so
Yeah, I don't
I
want
figured I'm not going to do a new open house because I have no way to advertise it, so I'll just stick to the one I've been doing. And
The
maybe
Paddington
somebody,
Swims Lake, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
and people have been driving by the signs for 3 weeks, maybe they'll decide to stop in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I go on vacation.
You go on vacation. Good. Good. That's the other key piece too, is remember, it is hard work at times, but make sure you have to unplug sometimes and recharge your batteries. Me and Pete were having a joke the other day because they told me, I hit it pretty hard during the week, so I don't do a lot on the weekends. I mean, a lot of my friends get frustrated because I don't ever want to go out and do anything, but I'm like, I hit it so hard during the week that by the time it's Saturday, Sunday, I just want to rest, get stuff done around the house. I wish I had the endless bounds of energy when I was 21 and I worked 60-hour work weeks, carried 15 units, and would still go out afterwards. Don't have that energy anymore, so I wish I did, but. Okay, if you guys don't have anything else, have a good week, and we'll see you on Monday with Rick. And I'll see you guys again next Friday. Thank you for coming.